Is attending the UN Convention Against Corruption held in Sharm el-Sheikh. This time, the interview is with the Honorable Mulambo Hany, the Zambian Minister of Justice. Let's take a look.
So on the sidelines of this gathering, we have the honor to have with us on TV International the Minister of Justice of Zambia, Mr. Mulambo Hany. Great pleasure, a great honor to have this interview on TV International.
Thank you. Actually, the pleasure is all mine. It's nice to be here in the beautiful resort of Sharm el-Sheikh, and we are very, very grateful with the people of Egypt in the way they've received us. We are quite at home here.
Thank you a lot for your presence. And let me ask you this question.
Yes.
There is a record when we are talking about participation. The number exceeded 2,200 persons here in this participation. What does that mean to you?
Well, to me, it means that obviously the whole world is looking at the issue of corruption from a different perspective. Previously, I believe that there's been a lot of self-interest by various nations, by various state parties, because perhaps they thought that you would fight corruption best with the internal efforts. But the reality is that corruption is now a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
One could, for example, get money, get ill-gotten wealth out of their own economy and then hide it in somebody else's country. So if we don't come together globally, as we have done today, then we'll have the problem will continue. It's not only about the poor countries, it's now about everybody.
Yeah.
And that, I think, is a realization. Looking especially at the speeches that we've had over the last 2 days, you can hear the general theme is that we want to cooperate together to kill this scourge, because ultimately corruption has an impact directly on the lives of those whose resources are taken away by the very, very selfish few.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. And of course, another big part is the fact that we're in Sharm el-Sheikh. I mean, everybody loves to be in a beautiful place like this.
Yes.
So the reputation of the city precedes it.
Yeah.
And we're grateful to be here, as I said earlier on.
Thank you a lot. And we are here in this gathering. There is some questions about the COVID, the context, the bad context, the bad situations imposed by COVID, and how COVID makes more and more opportunities of corruption and all over the world, especially in Africa.
Yes.
So how did you see this, and how you and your government and your institution can get off of this bad context in order to fight well the corruption?
Yes, thank you. It is very true that COVID has had different effects. For instance, one of the effects is even in the procurement process of the medicines and the necessary equipment. We've had difficulties in our country, for example, in the past, over that, with the earlier waves. So one of the things is to ensure we are a new government. For those that may not know, the current government of the Republic of Zambia was only voted in on the 12th of August. So we are just shy of 4 months of being in administration. But we've taken a very serious approach to dealing with matters of corruption. So we're working on capacity building. We're working on ensuring that there are integrity committees in these various government and quasi-governmental institutions, including the private sector, is being encouraged. And more importantly, we're learning best practice from those that have been there before. Also, this is now a global village, and so the use of ICTs.
Yeah, this is also one of my questions.
Yes.
Digitalizations represents now one of the efficient means in order to get rid of this disease, the corruption.
Yes. That is true. And just at this conference, we just had a very interesting module in one of the sessions in terms of recovery of stolen assets.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we learned about, we talked about, was the actual use of digitalization as a means of fighting corruption. So there's a lot we're learning, there's a lot we're doing, there's a lot more we can learn. Other things that we have done is, of course, we've put in place a fast-track mechanism in our country, Zambia, for the recovery of stolen assets. We're are using both the civil and the criminal proceedings as a way of recovering those assets, because at the end of the day, a school child in a rural part of Zambia will lose out on education, will lose out on health facilities if we don't fight this scourge. So we've got fast-track courts as a Ministry of Justice. That's one of the things that we are working on, of course, with other ministries, to ensure that we bring a complete end-to-end process in the fight against corruption. I would say if it was in another world that it's exciting to do all this, but then of course we understand that corruption is a scourge, so we just must look at it from a very, very serious perspective.
Yeah, about this point, how governments can insert the prevention against corruption in their plannings about developments, in their planning about economic growth. Yes.
Yes. So one of the things we have done very recently, we had the United Nations International Day Against Corruption, which we were celebrating, and one of our core partners from the civil society, known as Transparency International Zambia, came up with certain modalities. Amongst them, there were seven aspects to that declaration. Amongst them is, believe it or not, the use of the youth. Why must the youth be involved? Because we're dealing with the nursery.
Yes.
If we start to
education,
change the mindset, yes, and that is one of the best preventative measures that one can think of. If we start to change the mindset of our young people from the word go, then it's more likely that we will not see this sort of greed that we see with the older generation. I'm sorry to say that. So that is one of the preventive measures. Another, as I mentioned, is putting in of integrity committees and so on and so forth. Those various other methods. But for me, what I really believe in as the Minister of Justice is to start from the nursery, from the very young people. So that by the time we're talking about 10, 15, 20 years, a generation away from now, would have put in the mind that these are public assets for everybody to enjoy, and not for people to corruptly get them and benefit on their own. So that to me is one of the keys.
Yes, you know that our continent is the richest one in the world, and our citizens the poorest. So there is some points of corruption and some other points, yes. But how we can also fight these points of corruption in order to make citizens, African citizens, more and more comfortable in their life?
I think also one of the other things that can be done is to have robust institutions. Institutions of oversight must be robust, they must be independent, they must be able to function.
Yes.
There must be a lot more transparency in any public procurement that we undertake. And of course, there is the need for everyone to accept that it is not a fight for the law enforcement agencies or for the government.
It's not about implementing laws.
Yes, of course, implementation is a key part, but everybody must play their part, must play their role. At the end of the day, it's us against the few corrupt. Then we can see progress going forward.
Minister of Justice of Zambia, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot for this interesting interview.
I'm grateful that you took time to speak with me. I hope we were able to have a good discussion for the viewers out there to enjoy.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, and have a pleasant remainder of the next few days.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was